With regards to that data then that you are tracking, how in depth do you go with that? How in depth should people be going?
So I think it's really important. And again, I think this is probably because I come out of the social science, for the author to understand what their question is. Otherwise, you're just sort of gathering a lot of data and you don't really know why you're doing it or what you're doing. So I tend to go into so I do actually have what I would call maintenance analytics and like maintenance sales data that I gather that just I mostly use, and we can go into this, but I mostly look at like per week, kind of a short list of things. And it's mostly just to see if there's a red flag of some kind, like do I get a spike for some reason and why, or do I get a drop for some reason and why? So that's kind of maintenance, but that's a sort of different thing. When I'm really targeting or collecting data, that's because I have a specific question that I want answered, and that question should be a SMART goal of some kind, an SMART, which means you want a very specific answer to a very specific question. And that can be a question like, which social media platform is the most effective for actually selling a book, rather than for, and which is the most effective for getting the word out about a book. So those are the kind of questions you might ask yourself. And so some of the things that I track are like, I use website redirects a lot, and trust me, we'll be going back to this, but you might be thinking about what's an effective newsletter bait, or what increases new subs to your newsletter or decreases them. You can use surveys for quick gathering of data. I survey my readers all the time just because I tend to have a lot of them, and now they sort of exist in one ecosphere. So there's like a bunch of them I can just tap whenever I feel like it. And then I look at Google Analytics a lot. That's because one of my like overarching strategies, which I talked about being a person who relies on organic sales, is trying to get people on my newsletter as much as possible. So like that's kind of the point of view of my online presence. And therefore it's also the point of view of my website, is to get people on the newsletter. And therefore, like how many people visit my website is also kind of tied to how many people are getting on my newsletter. I also track other sort of the popularity of other things, like my Instagram posts, my Tumblr stats, my Wikidata stats, and then occasionally I'll take a look at some of my Outpost social medias. Outpost basically means it's a platform upon which I exist, but it's mostly not a platform I engage with. It acts kind of like a vehicle to get people back over to my website. That's how I use Pinterest, for example. So
Do you
pretty in depth, I guess.